This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manacero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manacero, and this is a show where 50-plussers and anyone else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes or Apple Podcast, type in Old Dogs, spelled D-A-W-G-S, find our podcast, and subscribe. Well, we have a great show for you today. I'm excited about it because anything that has to do with landlording, I am just like a sponge here because I've been trying to be a good landlord. I've been trying to hire good property managers who also assist me in that capacity. And but here's somebody who is an expert landlord here, and I'm talking about Barbara Getty. And Barb graduated Purdue, and that's in Indiana area. So she's a local there where I have properties. And she graduated, got married. Her family settled in Indianapolis in 1980. But tragedy struck in 1992 when her son was killed in a car accident, and unfortunately a divorce followed shortly thereafter. She bought a small fixer-upper home needing repairs, and following the fix-up, she and her daughters moved in there. And pleased with the way the project went, Barb then purchased her first duplex with no money, no credit, and no experience. Hoping she had the wherewithal to be a landlord, of course, she jumped into it as a landlord, as an owner of a rental property. And over time, she eventually grew her portfolio to 29 units, a mix of single and multifamily, low and middle income rentals, which she manages personally still to this day. She wrote and published a book called The Landlord Chronicles, Investing in Low and Middle Income Rentals, which offers common sense advice to both new and seasoned investors. Now, Barbara has become a celebrity here. She's been interviewed by CNBC.com, and that same article appeared in USA Today. She's been quoted in Personal Real Estate Investor magazine and has been interviewed by renowned investor Jason Hartman, who's been a guest on this show. And Barb has added consulting and speaking engagements to her business. In 2012, she got a realtor certification and now has her own brokerage firm. Although it hasn't been an easy road for her, Barbara is financially and emotionally invested in her work, and armed with a positive attitude and a strong sense of humor, Barb Getty is making a difference in her tenants' lives, the neighborhood, and the city as well. Well, Barb, welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network.
Thanks, Bill.
God, it's a pleasure having you on here. You have quite a background there, and what a story to tell.
I know. I just kind of backed into it all by necessity.
Well, it's neat. A lot of people, this is the area, everybody wants to own rental properties, but nobody wants to be a landlord, I find. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, we definitely want to do that. I love cash flow. I love, mailbox money or whatever you call it. But man, I don't want to have to deal with tenants. I don't want to have to deal with the headaches of,
Yeah.
managing the property. But yet you have kind of not only learned it, but embraced it, it sounds like. I'd love to just kind of hear your story. I know we kind of told a lot of it there, but maybe you can just kind of talk about, getting started and how you made some of those tough decisions.
Well, I was a freelance artist, so I made money on the side, but I had been a stay-at-home mom. And when Todd died, he was 17. My girls were 16 and 14. They adored their big brother. And then to have the marriage fail about 8 months after Todd died, I mean, it was devastating for all of us, needless to say. And I needed to figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to make money? Can't make it on art. That's just not even an option. And I had allowed my English and French certifications for teaching expire a long time ago. I was going to have to go back to school for that. I didn't have the time. And so in the meantime, I had bought this little 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that was about a third the size of our family home. And it was kind of a dump. But I mean, after it was done, we moved in here and I still live here. And my friends started saying, "Barb, you've got a knack for this. Why don't you buy a rental property?" And I thought, oh my God. So I started networking with people. I read all the books I could, and I I didn't have any credit. I had never thought to put a credit card in my name, which seems ridiculous now, but that was, about 25 years ago, and I was 45 years old. And so I took monies. I started looking at areas in Indianapolis that I could buy a house cheap, and I ended up finding a duplex for $19,000. And I couldn't get a loan, so I took money that I'd gotten from my divorce, and I bought it. So I ended up having to put about, my girls helped me with it, and I hired a few people to help. Um, so I got it up and running. It cost me about $8,000, and I kept it for about 15 months, rented it out, and realized, I have the personality to do this. I like people. I want to help people. So after about 15 months, I thought, well, now what am I going to do? So I thought, well, maybe I'll see if I can sell this place and then take that cash and buy another one. So I did that. I put it on the market, and it sold for more than twice what I bought it for in 3 days. So I took that money and I bought two more little dumps.
Were they duplexes also, or are they a single family?
They were both duplexes, and they both did a lot of work. But I took it on, and I had found these two guys that were, they were kind of on their own. They weren't incorporated, but they knew how to do everything, and they helped me, and they showed me how to do a lot of the stuff too. I mean, I installed all the window and door trim and the baseboards, and they showed me how to use a miter saw, power miter saw and nail gun. And so we just kind of went to town, and I got those two up and running and started renting them out.
Well, you just sounds like you just took the bull by the horns and to get started. How did you find your first tenants?
I advertised in a little free newspaper here. I started out renting everything by the week, which is difficult.
Really? Wow. That's
Yeah.
unusual.
And I made a lot of mistakes. I'm a trusting person by nature, so I believed every story. And you know, Barb, my car broke down. I'll have the rent for you next week. Well, the next week never comes. So I found after a while I was owning these two properties, and not everybody was paying. And I finally just thought, okay, I have to pay my bills. You know, I've got to pay the taxes and the insurance and all that. I thought, okay, I need to have a little heart to heart with myself and say, okay, stop. You have to get yourself together and not let people stay too long not paying. And so I kind of changed that. I changed my attitude about that. And I told them, I just started telling them, you know what, if you can be caught up in 2 weeks, we would love for you to stay. If not, you're either going to have to move out or I'll have to file eviction. And evictions here are pretty quick, about 2.5 weeks.
Right.
So that helped me a lot. And it just helped me get on a little better track.
Now, were they furnished? When you said you only, worked on sort of week to week, did you provide furnished property, or did they have to bring their own furniture in?
I provided the stove and fridge.
Okay.
And,
Got it.
yeah, and that worked pretty well. I got better at managing my tenants because, like you said, the whole landlording thing is what drives people out of the business. And a lot of people decide they don't want to do that, which is fine. I wanted to do it myself because I didn't want to have to pay somebody to do what I felt that I could do. So I thought I should just try it. And I still self-manage, 25 years later. That was a big part of it, just getting the management part. I happened to find a good handyman, and he's still with me.
No way, really? Wow.
Uh-huh. I mean, I was up on one of my roofs one day painting some trim boards, and he had a little storage across the alley, and we just started talking. And he said, if you ever meet anybody, he was born and raised in the neighborhood. And so I decided, after some months, my other guys, their prices had gone up, and I thought, okay, I'll try this guy. And he's been with me ever since. He's trustworthy. He's got a master key to get into all of my apartments. I can go on vacation, and if something goes wrong, Craig will go over there. I mean, that's a huge blessing, and that's so important.
Oh, that's huge. And he can do everything from plumbing to electrical, whatever.
Yes. Now, the more really involved technical stuff, I have to hire out, but I've searched out, other good, reasonable licensed contractors in the area, but he's not licensed.
And in the beginning, though, you did everything yourself with your daughters. I mean, what did you have any background in any kind of, work like that?
My husband had been with Eli Lilly, and they moved their people around a lot. And so we did some, minor stuff in homes that we bought. I had done wallpapering and painting and patching walls and, that kind of stuff. In one house, we switched out the plumbing in the basement to copper, and the next day he went to work, and I turned on the water, and it was like Niagara Falls down there. So I got the soldering iron out, and I fixed all the leaks, and it worked.
That's impressive. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And yeah, as you started to do this, and picking up more and more properties, were you sort of leveraging taking equity out of one to buy another, or did you just take out the loans? How were you sort of doing that, expanding your portfolio?
Okay, that's an excellent question. On my first 3 properties, I bought them with cash, but in the meantime, I got myself a credit card. I started building my credit, and eventually, I was able to get a loan on on my next property. And so I fixed that property up, and, then I kind of cashed out on it because I got a home equity line against the value in my own home. And so then from then I would start buying properties with cash, but then after I fixed them up, I'd put loans on them. Then I'd get to pull that money out because, I improved them above their purchase price. So, and then that enabled me to buy another property. And I did that for a few times. And I used my home equity line, and then I would put mortgages on them. And then my end goal, of course, was to pay off all of the mortgages, pay off my home equity line. And I reached that goal a few years ago. I became debt free. So I owned all of my properties free and clear, which was a beautiful thing.
That's wonderful. I mean, that's what a great way to to do this. And now you still got tons of equity in all those properties, but have you stopped buying at this point? You feel comfortable with the properties you have?
Yes, I actually, at the height of it, I had 29 units, and then I had written the book that you mentioned, and a guy in California read the book. He flew out here to meet me. He wanted me to help him buy properties here. So I kind of oversaw what I helped him buy, and I property managed for him. Then the property management segment of my business grew, managing higher end, 15 homes for other people plus my 29 units. And I thought, okay, something's got to give here. So, and in the meantime, I'd gotten my realtor license. I had acquired all these property management people from word of mouth. And my California person wanted me to get my realtor license so that I could do everything for him, be his one-stop shop, and represent him as his realtor. So I got that license in 2012, and I realized, okay, I can't do all of this. So about 3 years ago, I sold off a couple of my duplexes that were just problems. They were a little harder to rent, harder to keep tenants. I had picked up 3 single family homes along the way as well. So I ended up getting rid of the property management business about 3 years ago, and I've sold a couple more. I still have probably 18 or 20 units, and that's manageable for me with my life. So I'm just kind of cruising along, and I'm 71, but I don't see myself stopping this because I enjoy what I do, and you know.
That is so exciting. That is great. And it provides enough income for you. You're happy with the income, and
Oh yes, I'm totally happy with the income.
you don't have any mortgage payments to worry about either, too. So cash flowing probably pretty good.
Payments anywhere. I've paid off my own house and all of my rentals, so it's all income. And my Merrill Lynch guy says, Barb, you could retire. And I said, well, but what if I love what I do? He goes, well, don't retire.
That's so great. I love it. Well, I got a million questions for you here, but first off, there was at a point, what prompted you to write the book?
Well, I wrote the book because I learned so much by mistakes, misstep. And the books didn't tell me everything. And I thought, you know what? I'm an English and French major. I can write a book. And I started writing at night, and I put it together, and I took it from pretty much A to Z, finding neighborhoods. That's super important. I wanted all of my properties to be, within, a 5-mile proximity of each other. So I wouldn't be running all over town. I covered financing, home equity lines, private lending. And then a big section of my book was devoted to finding and keeping tenants and how to get them in and how to get them out, because that is the burnout that it drives people out of business,
Yeah, that's the truth. That can be the thing that, and the people that I know that have quit and sold all their properties, it's usually been because of the tenant side of it.
Exactly. And it just drives them crazy. And there are a lot of crappy property managers out there that overcharge you for repairs and, neglect your properties. I've seen that way too often, and people just end up giving up.
Yeah, no, that's true. I can't tell you how many I've gone through. It's just, it's not fun. But one thing that, at least I've found too, as an investor, fellow investor, is that you really don't even make any money the first year. It's really it's that renewed lease every year that when you really start to see, the funds and the returns.
Yes.
And you've been doing this for a while, so I'm going to pick your brain here as to what's your secret for finding and retaining tenants, long-term tenants. Do you have certain things that you look for that are sort of your, this is a quality of that long-term tenant that you look for when you're interviewing and taking applications?
Yeah, I first realized that the more I improved my properties, the higher level tenant I was going to get. In my opinion, when you get that rental, fix it up. Don't fix it up too nice. Don't fix it up like, it would be fixed up in a $300,000 neighborhood. But fix it up so that it compares well against your competitors, and fix it right the first time. Then that totally, decreases the repairs you're going to have in the future, and it attracts better tenants. I mean, as I moved away from weekly rents, I went to biweekly, and now most of my places are monthly, and some of them are yearly. So I'm just kind of moving to a more permanent situation. And I have tenants who have been with me for 6 years, 7 years, and they never plan on leaving. I mean, they're going to stay there. And that's the end goal, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's what we're all looking for, is those 6, 10, 20-year tenants. Yeah.
Yes. And when people come, I mean, I advertise on Zillow now. I get tons of response. And I like Zillow because the tenant pays for the application fee. Zillow does it all, and they spit it out back to you, and you can look at it. And also, when I try to plan my showings in like a 2-hour time period and just have as many people come as I can. So I'm not running back and forth a lot. And usually within one showing in a 2-hour period, I can find some really good applicants. But when they come, I mean, if it's important to me, I always show up there because I want to see what they look like. I want to see how well they take care of their car.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see what their kids look like. I mean, do they have dirty, grimy faces and, unwashed clothing, because that's a huge indicator of how your place is going to look, right?
Right.
So I look at all that.
Wow. In 2020, I think most of us did a lot of self-reflection. For many, it was around personal growth, maybe career choices, personal finances, you name it. One topic that really surfaced post-2020 is giving back. How can we make a difference in someone else's life? And is it possible to do good for others while actually making money? I'm really glad to share with you that our new partner, Equity and Help, literally, it helps you do exactly that. Equity and Help grows your capital while helping others and shows how the simple act of investing can make a huge difference to American families. In addition to their 8 to 12% average return, which is a reward in itself, Equity and Help makes it possible to help a family in need. The mission of Equity and Help is to give families the realization of the American dream, to own a home of their own when they might otherwise have not been able to. They have already helped almost 400 families find their home. If you are interested in a philanthropic investment model with an average return of 8 to 12%, according to Equity and Help, and helping American families, you can speak to a so-called philanthro investor at Equity and Help. Just visit equityandhelp.com/podcast. Again, that's equityandhelp.com/podcast. That's fascinating. Also, it's kind of almost like the open house mentality where, you've got other people showing up and you're creating sort of a competition, that people are thinking, gee, if I don't do something on this, it's going to be gone. There's 4 other people looking at it right now, or 5 other people, whatever it may be. And that kind of stirs people to act too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my last empty was a little 3-bedroom, 1.5-bath house that I had posted for, I don't know, $1,025. And I had probably 6 people show that day. And one of them kind of stayed behind and said to me, I know that I'm qualified, I'm clean, I have a great rental history, and I would be happy to pay you $1,125. I'm like, oh,
that's great.
And he's living so happily.
That's awesome. And do you have how are you on smoking and pets?
With pets, with my single families, I have allowed them, and I charge them a $300 non-refundable pet fee, and I charge them like $25 more per month. Now, on my duplexes, in general, I do not allow that because dogs can bark, and be annoying, the yard cleanup. So I try not to allow pets in my duplexes. I've got several duplexes, and I've got a triplex, I've got a 4plex. So those I just try to keep pet free.
And what about smoking?
I do allow smoking. I ask them to please, take it outside. They don't always follow that, but they often do. I've been fortunate that I haven't, in past 10 years, I haven't had any heavy smokers. A lot of my people just don't smoke. So that has been okay.
Now, you mentioned too that you put you really fix the house up nice and attracts nice tenants. But does that help if you're in a bad neighborhood?
Well, I started out I couldn't afford to buy in a B or a B minus neighborhood. So my neighborhood was Hawville, which is just west of downtown. Some of the streets there are a little iffy, some are better. Um, so, you know, you just have to kind of go with your gut on that.
Right, right. Have you ever just said, "I've had it with this neighborhood. I'm out of here," or have you always stuck it out?
No, I've stuck it out. And I
Good for
knew
you.
that my neighborhood was going to turn.
Hmm.
I knew that at some point it would turn, and it's been turning like the last, I'd say 4 years ago it started. I was seeing major rehabs being done, cleanups being done, um, new roofs and windows. And so, it came around. And so my neighborhood now is probably C plus, B minus.
A lot of those downtown areas, like Fountain Square, used to be a real tough area, but now it's
Yeah.
like one of the hot areas to buy.
Yes, and that show Good Bones, that's a mother-daughter team that lives in Bates Hendricks. And they've
Wow,
got down there. Uh-huh.
that's great. That's great. Well, you definitely had the battle scars like those of us that learn. I'm kind of from the school of hard knocks too. Sometimes,
Yeah.
but I always feel that there's no such thing as a mistake that can't be a learning experience. And I've made my share. And what would you say is sort of your biggest mistake? That's something that you have since moved away from might be helpful to our listeners in terms of how you overcame it and learned from it.
I would say my biggest mistake, especially early on, was being way too soft-hearted. I mean, I have heart for people, and it's hard to tell people, we just can't have you stay here. Um, but it is a business, and it's my livelihood, and I had to have that little, come to Jesus meeting with myself and say, Barb, you're going to go under if you don't change. So that was probably my biggest mistake. Yeah, but I rectified that several years ago. I still make judgment errors, and sometimes I let people stay too long. But for the most part, I'm happy with the way I'm running my business. And I have people who have moved out of state and they come back, they've saved my number, and they want to rent from me again.
Oh,
Um,
that's a great
it is,
testimony there.
it is, and and they tend to tell their relatives, and I've rented to some of them, and you know, it's all the networking. And I think getting repairs done quickly, which a lot of landlords don't do, is essential. You don't let somebody go with a water heater leaking or no heat.
No, that's the truth. Yeah, that ends up being sort of the number one complaint why people leave. They never repaired anything, or they never, or they made repairs and they didn't last, or what have you. That's
Yeah,
huge. That's
yeah,
huge.
exactly. I don't have my homes in an LLC. I'm a sole proprietor because I couldn't afford at the time to create an LLC and do all the stuff involved with it. And I still am a sole proprietor. I've never been even threatened with a lawsuit. I do have a $2 million liability policy for myself to cover my rentals, but I've never had to use it.
Great. Well, what would you say was something that you did that really ended up being sort of your biggest success that really helped you the most?
My biggest success was probably making improvements down the road where I could. I over the past few years, I've taken out almost all of the carpet at my places, and I've put down luxury plank vinyl, which is waterproof and very durable. And that makes it so much easier on the clean out side. I mean, carpets get matted down, they get stained. Um, so, and, putting in, new cabinetry, new countertops. I don't put granite or quartz in. I just stick with the solid surface stuff, but, it just improving the bathrooms. I've put in some tile baths, just for durability and better looks than using all my stuff was, that kind of pliable shower wall
Like
cover.
fiberglass or plastic type.
Yeah, and it ends up cracking and yellowing, and then it's hard to clean. And so, yeah, those are probably the best things that I've done for myself because I've realized that I'm getting better tenants. You know.
Right, right. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our audience are folks that are 50 years of age and older. And we have a lot of other people listen too, but at least we're focus our show primarily at those folks that are either approaching retirement or already in retirement. And so they're looking at real estate investing as a means to be able to either supplement their retirement or be able to, generate some income and create something that they can also hand down to their children, as a legacy. What advice would you have for those people? A lot of them are saying, well, I'm too old to get started doing this. What advice would you have for them, having, started out on your own and done this? Now, you were younger than 50 when that happened, but it's still, these folks are, kind of looking at as a viable means. What maybe advice would you give to folks like that?
I would tell them that, most everybody has some investment in stocks or whatever, bonds, but the passive income and the tax breaks you get from being a landlord are fantastic. And the write-offs that you get, it really is a wonderful supplement to your overall savings and future income plan. I highly recommend it. I'm on Social Security now, but I have all this other income. And I think it's just a smart way to diversify your investment portfolio. Even if you only have just one or two, it is something that is yours. And I would advise people to pay them off as soon as they can so that it's all income producing.
That's great advice. Yeah, that definitely. You've got all these properties, and I'm sure they're going up in value, every year. And it's something that's tangible that, it's not like annuities or stocks and things like that where you don't really have any control on it. You do have to maintain them and that's a big part of it, but you budget for that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's great. That's great. The book, and I haven't read it, so I have to confess I am going to pick up a copy though. I definitely want to read it because I like stuff that's written by people because they feel like there hasn't been a book that really tells it like it is, and that's what I like about your book.
Oh, and I'll tell you that there are plenty of horror stories in there.
Yeah, the tenants from hell stories.
People will be appalled. I wrote that book in 2010 when I had been in the business for about 5 to 6 years. And I just made gross mistakes all over the place. But I had learned, mistakes are okay. That's how do you learn? How do you improve? You improve by all the missteps that you make and you learn from that, right?
That's true. That's true. And those are the best lessons, the best learned lessons, right? The ones that hurt. Yeah. So.
Yeah, because they stick with you.
That's it. Well, this is great. Well, we're definitely going to have a link to your book. Any plans to write anything else?
I am done writing. I have my blog. It's thelandlordchronicles.com.
Oh,
and that in itself is a really good tool for people to use. I have, products, tips, techniques that I share on there and just all kinds of stuff. So it's a good tool because, I haven't written much in it lately because my real estate business has been pretty busy. I don't advertise as a realtor, but just word of mouth. But there's a lot of good facts and learning things in that blog.
That's great. A great resource. Excellent. We're kind of at that point where we need to wrap it up here, and we had this little session we call Wrap It Up. And you and I talked earlier regarding the books, and actually, my suggestion here that you can we're going to take favorite real estate book and business book, put it into one, and that's going to be your book. And so we're going to have a link there so that people can see. Now, normally I don't let people say, no, your favorite book can't be your own book, but you deserve it here. So I think we're definitely going to put that in there, and maybe we'll just move on to the other questions if you're up for that.
Yeah, I did want to tell you that if someone wants to contact me through email, my current email it's bpmbarb@gmail.com. And that's my business email that I use.
Oh, great. Oh, thank you. That's really nice of you to offer that. Super. Well, did you have any other, in the, some of the areas we asked, we had like favorite, let's see, we have a website, an app, a quote, and so forth. Did you want to do the rest of those questions?
Oh, I have a couple of favorite apps that I would love to share.
Sure.
As you know, any rental property that you have, you can write off mileage. And I found an app called Mile IQ. It's a yellow background with a big white M in the middle. And it is awesome because, to be honest, I was terrible about keeping a log of my mileage. I just would forget. And this is just, it tracks your drives. It's got a GPS in it. It tracks your drives, and then you can classify them as personal or business. So at the end of the year, I just did my taxes with my CPA. It's like, oh, okay, I wonder what my yearly mileage was. Oh, okay, it was 7,000 whatever miles. And so it was so easy for me. It's a wonderful app. That's
great. That's a great one. I love it.
Mm-hmm. And my second favorite is Rentometer.
Same here. I love Rentometer.
If you pay, I pay for it because I want to see the addresses of the other properties they're comparing it to see if they're really good comps for my rent. Because every time somebody moves out, I raise my rent. But it's a good way to check, even before you buy a place, what are the rents in the area, So that's a really good one. I like that one.
Oh, that's great.
I think it's like $60 a year if you pay for the pro.
Oh, I love it. And that's one of my favorite. I use it all over the country. So it's super.
Yeah. Isn't it awesome?
Do you have a favorite quote?
My favorite quote that I have shared with my kids and my friends and other people who invest is stay in the day. If you spend your time regretting the past, that blocks your progress. And if you spend your time worrying about the future, it's paralyzing. So you have a good plan, but stay in the day. Appreciate this day and everything that it offers.
That's excellent.
I live my life that way, and I'm a really happy person, I think, because of that.
That's great. That's great, Barb. And the final question is, if you lost everything, all your assets, and you had to start all over again, knowing what you already know, but you only have $1,000 in cash, what would you do to relaunch your real estate business?
I'd start probably by networking. If I needed to find a private lender, I would really search out that sector big time, because some of those people just, rob you blind. And if I were still able to get a loan, I would go with it. I would get out there and buy a cheap place and get going, because I know the value that lies in owning real estate. And I started knowing nothing, and now I feel like I've got it all pretty much in hand.
That's awesome. Awesome.
I would definitely do it again. It was really scary for me. I was on my own, but I have no regrets.
Well, you are an amazing person, Barb. This is it's just been a great, just a great opportunity, I think for our guests here to, hear firsthand how somebody single-handedly went out there without any background, without any experience, and turned, lemons into lemonade, so to speak. But you did much more than that. It's just awesome, and you should be proud. I mean, we've got a book, you got all the other stuff, the accolades out there. It's pretty impressive stuff.
I'll tell you a funny one anecdote before we leave.
Sure.
When I was writing my book, some expert had told me, it would be really good if you could have a, kind of a famous person write the foreword for your book. And I thought, oh, great. I don't know any famous people. So I went to Barnes and Noble and I looked in the real estate section, and I found a guy, Stuart Leland Ryder, and he had written some of the, books for dummies. So he was pretty big in the business, and I stalked him. I found his home address. He lived in Scottsdale, and I sent him a cover letter and a draft of one of my chapters. It was the chapter on renting to people. And I was walking into CBS one day and my phone rang, and I answered, "Hi, this is Barb. Barb, this is Stuart Ryder. I'm calling you from Arizona." I mean, I about fell down in the parking lot. I had to go back to my car and sit down and talk to him. And he said, I would love to write the foreword for your book.
Wow.
And he wrote me the foreword, and then he invited me to co-author with him on one of his business books.
No way.
A lot of business, with all the business language. And so I did that with him.
That is awesome. Wow. God, that is so cool. That is really neat.
Just got to have guts and do it, right?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you do. You couldn't have done it unless you did, especially, you're talking about, I'd go find some private money. For a lot of people, that'd be like, oh man, I don't know that I can do that,
Yeah.
But, no, it sounds like you've overcome that. And, you've definitely made a name for yourself here.
Thanks.
Well, we have this tradition on our show that, we are called the Old Dogs REI Network. And so we have all of our guests close us out with their best old hound dog howl. Are you up for that?
Oh, I can do that.
See, I know you wouldn't be afraid of anything.
I fit right into that category.
No, not true. I'm supposed to be the old dog here, But yeah, we'd love to hear you howl if you want to.
Okay, here you go. Woo, 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 woo!
That was great. That was like the best one I've heard, I think, in the last 6 months here. That was really good. Oh, Barb, I cannot thank you enough for being on. This has been really fantastic.
And my advice to your listeners, just do it. Set your mind to it. Get your stuff together. Get a plan and just do it.
Great advice. And that is really it. That's the hardest part. People can do all the courses and read all the books and all the stuff, but when it really comes down to, I figure the real education starts after you sign your first set of escrow papers. That's really where the education begins.
Exactly. And and if they can join a local real estate investing group or a landlord group, that's also really helpful. But Bill, I will tell you, I know some people in that group that I still go to on a monthly basis. And I mean, I ran a little women in real estate subgroup. I know people there who have been coming to that meeting for 15 years and they have yet to buy their first property. And that's sad.
Yeah. And there are a lot of people that fall in that camp. They're so afraid, some are afraid of succeeding, some are afraid of failing. Some are just afraid, and of the unknown,
Yeah.
But you're right that you just, it didn't sound like you hesitated. Not only did you jump in and buy your first house, which sounded like it was definitely an ordeal, but jumping right into another one, just boom, 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 and
Yeah.
that's pretty impressive. I'm I think you definitely are a model for a lot of people listening that have been dragging their feet. They can look at your story and say, you know what? If Barb did it, I can do it.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. And, you've been an excellent host. I really appreciate it.
Well, the pleasure has been all mine. And I also want to thank all our Old Dog listeners out there, too, for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you've taken the time to join us means a lot, and we really appreciate it. And please note, everything that Barb talked about today will be detailed in our show notes, so you can look at those and the links and some of the other things that are in there, and especially the links to her fantastic book. It's all going to be in the show notes at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog, and you're going to look for the interview with Barb Getty. Well, that's the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward, and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.